This year's running back class is absolutely loaded. This group consists of some really fun prospects, and I think you'll be happy to hear my rankings as they differentiate a lot from the consensus. In this format, I'll start with my number 10 running back and work down. I hope you all enjoy this video, and if you have any comments on these rankings, let me hear them down below. We start this video with RJ Harvey. There's a lot of buzz about the running back out of UCF, and recently I've seen him very high in some of the rankings out there. RJ is 5'8", 205 pounds, and he rushed for 1,577 yards in 2024, and he is my running back 10 out of the 12 backs that I watched. RJ has one of the most compact running back bodies you'll see in this class. Just turning on his games, it stands out. Harvey's very noticeable as the guy with the compact and thick build in the backfield and looks like a ball of muscle. The lower body looks so damn sturdy when he's running too. The combine testing wasn't lying. I maybe wouldn't have guessed the 4.4 flat 40 time, but I would have guessed that his 10-yard split was faster than the 1.57 that he ran. The speed stood out when he's working one way, pivots, and flies in one direction. There's considerable acceleration, and I saw his long speed on an 80-yard touchdown run. There are some runs with good feel to bounce it or cut the run out from behind his blocks to make something else happen. Some of my favorite runs from RJ comes from his patience and ability to stop behind the line and find open spaces. What makes it better is he's actually fast enough to capitalize on what he sees. The lateral movement is unreal when he's in control. RJ Harvey can dance with the best of them. He's so efficient hopping around the backfield and sidestepping. The start-stop is pretty good, and I particularly love watching him sink the hips and push off his very powerful legs to change direction. Shows constant drive and violence as a runner, and it especially stood out in the latter half of the game. With smaller guys, it's common to see them get pushed around pretty good, and maybe they ease up to make someone miss instead of taking on contact from guys that outweigh them by 30 or so pounds. But Harvey will turn towards you, accelerate, and lower the pads to hit you. He's certainly not opposed to throwing his body at you. Sometimes I do wonder how this team won games though. RJ Harvey had some tragic surroundings, whether you want to talk about the lack of variety in the scheme, the awful blocks, or the wear and tear that he was put through, getting the ball on what felt like every other play. There's reps where I do question the decision making to dance around the line looking for some sort of opening, and if it isn't perfect on first look, he's looking for something better. This leads to TFLs and him getting stranded behind the line, putting himself at a disadvantage sometimes. Harvey's shown he's capable of scanning and using his vision to create plays, but at times he's just too patient, trying to read the line and use vision to get out. There's a lack of decisiveness, and he either stutters down or almost stops because he's looking for something better than if he were to just cut it up and plummet for a couple of yards. It feels like a lot of the time when he gets an inside handoff, he cuts it outside. I don't know what it is. RJ must really not like staying inside. I swear it's some sort of bad habit or tendency of his that he has to take the ball elsewhere. The pass protection is just a hard watch. I could just show you clips and that'd be much easier than sitting here typing out and explaining everything he does wrong in pass protection. And I'll just sum it up by saying it wasn't great. I don't think his short area lateral movement really translates to the open field. I mentioned those big legs and the way he can change direction laterally, and it is hard to explain, but Harvey's cuts are often really effective at the line, but you don't see him make the incredible jukes or really make anyone miss and bite dust. When he's accelerating to the second level and all of a sudden the defenders enter his sight, he often wins in other ways than his jukes or cuts. You don't really see an explosive mover in open space. I actually thought Harvey was more of an inconsistent player, but at his best, he's one heck of a runner with a lot of what you seek at the position. But the lower end has me worried and makes me view him more as a boomer bust player. Truly a puzzling evaluation for me, and I don't know if I'll be the one betting on RJ Harvey, but I'm still aware of the upside of the player he could be. We're getting a surprise ranking this early with Kaleb Johnson as my running back 9. Johnson's 6'1", 224 pounds, and with Kaleb Johnson, the body composition is what you're looking for, and being that big yet that agile is appealing in every way. I see it like this. He has a body to play behind his pads, but the feet are good enough to complement and even add a dimension to his game. Johnson shows glimpses of everything, and it's so annoying. I don't know what I'm getting rep to rep. You see the big playability, and he really has moments where you just like everything. His best is pretty unreal, where you see the quick feet, some acceleration, power, and even sometimes you'll make someone miss with a nice move. But why it's so annoying is because it is all wildly inconsistent. I know he's capable of being great, I've seen it, but the majority of the time, he's just not so great. This kid can follow his blockers like he's drifting downstream in a river. He's never getting there before his blocks, and the pace that he carries behind the line should carry very nicely over to the NFL. Kaleb does a nice job tying his patience, his vision, and his feet all together. Everything looks controlled when he's at the point and needs to make the decision. There's a break point on some of his runs, and before he even gets there, he's showing patience. And when he gets there, you can tell he sees it and the feet are right there with his eyes to put it all together really well. Has some real flashes of pretty incredible vision and instincts for the position. Let's say the team has counter or something called where the blocks target a specific gap, but he ditches the scheme and the blocks to go off on his own, and it works. It can obviously work against him, but when it did work, he looked like a genius. There's a lot of plays that I'm watching and I'm thinking anyone could run through those gaps. A lot of the time I see the O-line paving the way and he gets what's blocked, no matter how big the gain is. I'll put it this way, Iowa and their line knew how to spring an open lane and get a running back 30 yards downfield without being touched. And I know that sounds kind of crazy. He's kind of an upright runner with his pad height, and you really don't see him win with his pads sticking up. It's pretty much down on first contact, and he struggles to generate any power or drive. He improved a little throughout the year, but you still see room to improve. Also, at Kaleb's size, you'd be expecting him to be a guy to fall forward and push the pile a little, right? Well, he didn't. I wish he'd play a little bit more like his weight would suggest. To expand on my last point, he's listed at 220 pounds and you think good things, but you shouldn't be thinking those things. You see him get arm tackled, he's on the way to the ground too easily, and I'd like to see power up the gut. And at times, it looks like he's almost voluntarily going to the ground after an ounce of contact. The balance is certainly nothing special, barely even average, and I don't think he's a downhill bruiser in any type of way. There's so much variance play to play. I kind of already hit on this, but you kind of see it from one play to the other. One play, you see him wipe out behind the line because a linebacker tapped his shoelace. Then the next play, he reads it excellently, shows speed, power, and elusiveness to take it 30 yards to the house. And I really just don't know what to bet on. I think he lacks some of the violence and some of that hard running that you want to see from your running back. I'm not saying he isn't trying, but there's definitely a lack of fight in him that some of the top guys in this class do display. You don't often see him carving out yards because he wants it more than the next guy. Not a lot was asked of him in pass protection to my surprise, and that duty only faded for him down the stretch. I saw him given less blocking assignments the further the season went on. He was very slow at the point of attack. There wasn't really that attitude or feistiness where you see him pop the pads. Kaleb certainly has the frame and ability to get better in pass pro, but he's not even close to the top of this class. Kaleb Johnson can either make it big or maybe not be so good at the next level. The high end is dang good from Kaleb, but the low end concerns me. I think he'll have fans and a good shot to make it in the league, mostly because of the systems in the league and how they compare to his skill set. I do have my reservations, but there's also a part of me that loves this type of player and what he can be at his best. And this carries on with that Kaleb Johnson unconventional ranking, as I know people have him much higher. The next guy I have is a little different, and we'll start talking about Trevor Etienne. Probably not one of the more popular backs you hear about. Trevor Etienne is the younger brother to Jaguars running back Travis Etienne. Trevor Etienne is 5'8", almost 5'9", and weighed 198 pounds. First off, his legs never stop. Etienne will maximize his carry every time. When he's being dragged down or anytime he's fielding contact, he will not stop his feet and be brought down. He's going to fight and churn for as much as he can. As a smaller back weighing less than 200 pounds, you better move at least well. As it happens, Trevor moves better than well. This guy's change of direction is out of control. I don't care how fast he's going, if he's already made a move, or even if he's mid-fall. He is always a threat to make you miss. The moves he makes, especially in tight spaces, are unguardable. Can be used as an asset in the pass game too. Very few backs in the depth of this class were good through the air, but Trevor's definitely a good guy to have in your backfield if you want someone who understands and excels when catching passes and working with his quarterback. Trevor Etienne is a top tier accelerator. The burst he possesses is everything and more that you want in your backfield. Obviously, he's a little lighter and you'd expect pretty good bursts, but this guy can fly downfield with very little space. When a player is breaking angles that consistently versus SEC competition, I come to think the player's pretty fast. He's a good zone runner with plenty of experience over this past season running behind zone blocks. I love some of his best plays when he's completely cutting backside, when it's probably pretty risky, and it works. There's some real flashes that hold merit because it's the right decision to go against the grain. Trevor shows he at least has a little power element in him. He'll break some of the not so good tackles, and sometimes he'll straight up shake a defender off without having to think twice. It's hard to explain, and mostly because he's inconsistent when breaking tackles, but he shows he can do it. The feet, man, we already talked about the legs, but the feet are just so dang active. Behind the line, approaching the line, and in open space, the feet are never settling. Etienne's got foot quickness that'll have you in awe sometimes, whether it's a cut he makes or how fast he pivots and accelerates. It can be a flaw, as I do think it makes him a little more prone to tripping, and the fact that the little things can affect you a little more. I think he understands space and sets up defenders to make their lives hell trying to tackle him. I saw it constantly where he'd set one way, get the defender leaning, and then cut back to make it look like they never had a chance. Sometimes he just needs to cut his losses, stop dancing, and plunge up the middle. Trevor's a bit eager to escape if the play's not blocked to perfection, or if he's just trying to make someone miss around the line, and it gets him in trouble. Trevor certainly gets dragged down like his size would indicate. Especially without momentum, Trevor can easily be dragged down or spun around by a linebacker and occasionally a DB. I don't want him straight inside on goal line or really anything with every body on the field stacked in the middle. I think the vision's more average, and he's got real sporadic decision making. There is some real good stuff where he pops over a couple gaps and makes something happen, sure, but there's also a very bad example when there's clearly a spot or a lane for him to go, but instead he drops his eyes and misses it. Etienne may have a low center of gravity and break some type of tackles, but I'd still say his weight is easily influenced in contact, and I didn't think his contact balance specifically was all that great. I also don't think you look at Trevor Etienne's height and weight and expect a running back that can pass protect, but it'd sure be nice. Yeah, I don't think he's someone that will be reliable in pass pro in the NFL. There's just physical limitations and an overall lack of polish, but he still does have some decent reps at the college level. I think he needs to lower his pads at the point of contact a bit more. Something I saw consistently from his tape was him coming to a stalemate when he gets stood up when someone's coming down and hitting him. He needs to get lower and find a way not to lend his whole midsection to tacklers. I really couldn't tell you why, but I do tend to gravitate towards the type of running back in the build that Trevor Etienne is and has. He's just a ball of quickness with some real athletic traits, and I can't find myself disliking this type. I think the ceiling's high, and I really think you'll see his receiving game translate at the next level. The next guy is Quinshon Judkins, the strong running back from Ohio State. Judkins is 6 feet tall and 221 pounds. The quick feet and the acceleration are very impressive for someone of Judkins' build. You see this sturdily built back, but the feet look like they're of a much smaller runner. Quinshon's the type of back that's more of a grinder between the tackles. This kid's for NFL teams that want someone who can withstand a season's worth of beatings and someone that can carry the load for an offense. Speaking of carrying, this kid carries a lot of forward momentum. Judkins is built so well that it helps him when running downhill. When defenders see this guy tunneling down the barrel in the fourth quarter, it's really tough on the mental side. And I don't know if someone wants to step in front of that and contest him. And he uses more than just his forward momentum with this well-built body. He has a nasty stiff arm, and I mean lethal. It's a nice thing to have in your bag. Slips quite a few arm tackles when he's quick through those gaps. You'll see him fire through, and you can tell it takes more than a little arm to bring him down. I think he tempos behind the line really well. According to the play and situation at hand, you'll see Quinshon change his speed and pace in the backfield to either speed up because someone's chasing backside or he's patient while his block's set up in front of him. The hands are plenty good enough, and he consistently shows his ability to transition from catch to run and gets upfield with a smooth process. Most of the time I saw him use this little hop step to get going as he was catching the ball, and I thought that was pretty good. It certainly worked well for him at the college level, and I don't see why it wouldn't translate. The contact balance doesn't compare with the top guys in this class. I also think once he's clicked up to that second gear, you don't want him making sharp cuts or strong pivots. The weight he carries doesn't make it easy to change direction, so when someone persuades that weight one way too far, I don't really think he has the balance to overcome it. I see pretty inconsistent feel and vision. Judkins is powerful, but he'll ditch the flow of the run play design to plummet up the middle and see how far he he can get. And I do resort back to that comment I made earlier about the way he flows behind the line. He does it pretty well, but this is like a glitch here. He does this sometimes, but there are very much times where I look at him and he's just flowing behind the play really well. And then there's this inconsistent one-off time that he'll run right up the middle despite where his blocks are. Ohio State used a lot of zone, and Quinshon was good when running behind zone, but I wish they used a little more gap scheme for him. I think that aligns just much better with his style of play, and he was even surprised when he was told that he only ran 46 man scheme runs this year. Some of the blocking work he was assigned with was a bit lackluster. For all the power runs he has, I barely see that translate as a blocker. You'll see a defender bypass him and just dodge him, but also his hits don't seem to hold up the defenders much like you'd think so. The tail end of the year looked a little bit different than the start. I turned on some of his games earlier this year and I thought he played with a much better motor, more speed, and willingness to just throw his body around. And the funny thing is, I've actually heard vice versa on this. People said he improved as the year went on, but I saw him be a little bit more careful down the stretch. The 4.48 time looked good at the combine, but I wouldn't have estimated that time just based off his play speed on tape. I would have guessed maybe a good 4.5s like 4.54 or 4.53, but that sure does look good on the resume and looks good on draft boards. I have a tape score that I've worked on and it really did not like Quinshon Judkins. I don't mind the player and I think he could be really good at the NFL level. I much prefer Quinshon as a downhill between the tackles workhorse type of running back. If I could get him in a gap scheme heavy offense too, that'd be great. I seem to be a bit lower on the player though, and I thought I'd be much higher, but I still see a solid running back as a power guy, and I'm not normally one for that type of back either. Speaking of power, my next guy's a fan favorite for some, and his name is Cameron Skattebo. Cam's a thicker running back standing at 5'9.5" and 220 pounds. Cameron Skattebo is a rolling boulder downhill. You see him bowl through gaps once he's cut it loose, and lowering the shoulder, popping a linebacker off his feet is a very fun thing to watch. I really thought there was a more diverse run scheme with some of the plays that were blocked the right way, like you'll see in the pros. I like that he got experience with both zone and gap scheme runs over this past year with Arizona State. Of everyone on Arizona State, open shot, the fate of the universe on the line, the Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth, you better hit it. I want Cameron Skattebo.
I want Iguodala.
Skattebo makes it look like it's life or death and makes it his mission to gain something. Losing yards is not an option for Cam. Some players are just playmakers like that. He has a sense and consistently gains unexpected yardage. He's got a strong, thick build that can take and dish punishment. The sturdiness in his frame helps the balance and the ability to carry his momentum through contact. Skattebo is really good at dropping his pads, weight, and shoulder to bounce off contact and force missed tackles at the point. To my surprise, he was pretty sneaky elusive, at least when he was aware of the tackler. Skattebo is capable of making an efficient cut or a sudden move to make someone miss. I'm not expecting him to make people miss left and right in a phone booth or even at higher speeds, but he can plant his foot and make a subtle move to make someone miss. He's just such a strong player in the lower half. You see him churn through lower tackle attempts and carry players on his legs, or even push for an extra yard or two when he's going down to maximize the play. His infamous Texas performance is even better on tape because his team was so outmatched. They had nothing for that Texas defense, but Cam Skattebo put his team on his back and made it competitive and looked like the only one that belonged on that Arizona State offense. I think he sets up his blocks really nicely in the screen game, and you can tell he's really adept as a screen catcher. He's real comfortable using and maneuvering space to manipulate defenders with the blocks out in front of him. He'll kind of like leverage outside, push wide, stress the space, then cut it up or weave with speed where he has space and where he has created that space. On the little bit that I saw, the pass pro looked good enough. NFL coaches will have something to say about how far he drops his head and some of the cut blocks, but I think he's built for it, and we all know Cam Skattebo ain't shying away from contact. If he's making someone miss, it's with the slow, exaggerated cuts that take all the wind out of the sails. Say he's out in space, rolling at a decent speed. To become movable enough to make someone miss, he needs to decelerate enough to where he can get his weight left to right. And that's a whole process for him. Cam Skattebo is one of the most competitive players you'll see in this NFL draft. There's no bone on this guy's body that knows the word quit. The powerful playstyle and build, along with the contact balance that comes with being sturdy in his game. The tape score I use really suffered with the athletic scores, but the production, the power, and the sheer will to win that Skattebo plays with is enough to compensate. We have a bit of a surprise here. It is Damien Martinez at my running back 5 spot. Between Skattebo, Damien Martinez, and the next guy we'll talk about, I have them all in the same tier and I view them as interchangeable. We'll start talking about Damien Martinez, the Miami running back that measured at a very solid 5'11" and 5'8" and weighed 226 pounds. We'll start talking about feet because they are so incredibly light for a 220 plus pound back. It took me 3 plays to notice just how absurd it is that he can move like that. If you look at his movements in space, this dude can make you miss or he can run right through you. The fact he moves like a much lighter back makes him so much more versatile and uncommon. The feet may be light, but he's built like a bag of boulders, even with no momentum. Damien can push a pile with a 2-yard runway and no one can take him down. He's so stout and strong through that second level and even on the first in the line of scrimmage area. He has the ability to break off or carry defensive linemen while wreaking havoc, tearing through your defense. I think the lower body strength is notable and a big part of how he can stay up in the middle of piles, and even when he's churning those legs through contact or tackle attempts while he's got defenders grabbing on him trying to drag him to the ground. Martinez showed standout patience behind the line. Martinez will sit down and wait for his blocks to manifest ahead of him, and once they do, look for him to find that space, cut, and go. Warning: do not meet Damien Martinez in the gap. This kid will steamroll over linebackers consistently when they contest him in the hole. If your average Joe tried tackling Damien Martinez, there's a good chance you'll be seeing Joe in the hospital. He shows very good balance that comes with his real sturdy build. When you watch him enough, you can almost anticipate when he's going to break tackles. If he's running in a straight line, let's say some safety comes up and isn't quite square, I know Martinez is breaking that contact off like it's nothing. It's hard to explain, but like when you watch it enough, you get this feel. We've mentioned this before about other backs, but I do like the scheme versatility with Damien Martinez. I saw or heard something that Miami deployed gap scheme runs for him a majority of the time, but I charted much more zone than gap. I really think he can do both at a good level though. Damien's skill set really fits anything you want, maybe other than the wide and outside stuff. I want this guy coming downhill, using his vision, patience, and toughness between the tackles. There's little polish in his approach in pass pro, and despite his stout build, he doesn't always block like you'd think for someone of that significant size. Martinez tends to lower his head, play with higher pads, and a much lighter base than ideal. However, I see flashes on his pass pro tape where everything looks at least decent, and I think he's gonna be fine under the right coaching. Just takes a little time. He may not have been so great during the season, and the reason why I have so much hope is because at the Senior Bowl, Martinez put on a show in the pass pro drills. It was amazing to see his technique looked much improved. I don't think he's ever gonna wow or overwhelm you with his athletic ability or profile. He's more of like your average type of athlete for a running back, but I think that'll do Martinez and his skill set just fine at the next level. The style of play really doesn't need a 3rd gear or 4th gear, 5th, whatever you want to say. The pass game element in his game is pretty inconsistent. There's some dreadful drops, and I don't think he's very natural as a pass catcher, and I certainly don't want to see him as a weapon through the air by any means. I don't know if I just chose the best games he had in his college career, but that feels like the only reason I'd be so hyped about Damien Martinez compared to what I've heard elsewhere. When I flipped the tape on, I watched the first few plays and was already a big fan of Damien's game. Martinez is a punisher with excellent footwork and control for someone that weighs over 220 pounds. I don't know if any NFL teams will view him the same as I do, but I'd be fine taking him much higher than consensus has him right now. My number 4 running back is Dylan Sampson, my guy. Again, I'd ball him in with Martinez and Skattebo, and I'd be fine taking any of these 3 guys. They're, again, interchangeable. Although Sampson is a bit lighter and smaller at 5'8" and 200 pounds, so he's kind of a different flavor from the other 2. And you may hear that number 200 for his weight and assume one thing, but right from the start, I saw a powerful back with strength in the lower body and someone capable of holding his own between the tackles without question. You see him used in short yardage all the time. His team believes in him to go fight for the yards required, and he got the job done a lot when he dropped the pads and goes for the sticks. The foot speed and quickness behind the line is unlike anyone else in this class, other than Jeanty, of course. The tempo he plays with and control he has ties to the feet. When he needs to change direction or accelerate forward, the feet become very light and very fluid. I thought he had patience and smarts to stay behind his blocks and knows how to utilize them to his benefit rather than seeing his blockers as an obstacle or as something he has to fight through. A lot of the time he had pullers in front of him on gap scheme runs, and you see him wait to set everything up before he makes a pivot or the cut when he reads the line ahead of him. I really love his willingness to throw himself at the pass rush to prevent pressure to his quarterback. There's obviously physical limitations that come in his pass protection stemming from his overall size, but you watch him and he's willing to get ran over by someone 100 pounds heavier than he is. He has a natural leverage advantage when it comes to blitzers, and his strong lower half can actually anchor down and take contact really well for his size. When you're 200 pounds and I have multiple A++ plays charted for you on pass pro reps, I think you're doing something right. Very gap heavy scheme at Tennessee, though it seems like it could have been matchup dependent. Some games they use zone more than others, but majority of the runs I saw in Sampson's tape were gap scheme runs, and I thought he was really good behind him. He's a real crafty playmaker that knows how to manipulate defenders with blocks and the angles that he sets. Sampson was the best at setting defenders up and manipulating the defenders. Sometimes he'd set himself up wide just to cut back inside with a blocker in the way to impede on the defender's angle, or just something like that. You can tell he has this knack for just toying with tacklers, almost like he knows what to do to make it more challenging or the most challenging for someone to make the tackle on him. It's actually so refreshing when running backs have speed like Dylan Sampson does. I think Dylan's a fast player with the ability to break tackle angles and hit the home runs downfield. You see the quick feet and acceleration to get up to speed, but he can keep that speed and break away. Anyone at his size is just at a physical disadvantage just by default. When it comes to blocking, it's tough to make it work when you're not holding as much pure mass as the linemen or linebackers that you're trying to block. I think it's the same just with power running. Do you expect a featherweight to knock out a heavyweight with one punch? No, zone running was not a good thing to watch early on for this team. Tennessee's offense did not utilize zone a whole lot, and when they did, it was clear this team wasn't too experienced doing so. Sampson specifically wasn't faring all that well and looked out of sorts or kind of lost early in the season, but it did get better over the course of the season. Still wouldn't list him up there with the top zone guys in this class. I really do wish he was a tad better in open space. I'm certainly not saying he's bad, but you see some of the traits and I think it can be better, especially a runner as small as he is, but I think he makes up for it by the way he plays with power and can fall forward for yards at his size. The lack of usage in the pass game kind of leaves me with questions for him as a pass catching option as he heads to the NFL. By all accounts, he profiles real nicely in that area of the game. I just didn't see a lot of receiving production in his game this year. I really gravitate towards the players like Sampson, the movement skills, the crafty playmaking ability, and not to mention the patience and the smarts he plays with. I think I'll be a bit higher on Sampson than general consensus, but my goodness, how could I not be? When it comes to the NFL draft for Sampson, I think we're talking about a 3rd or 4th round pick, but I'd maybe take him in the 2nd round if all the conditions and the situation was right. We start to break into the top 3 running backs, and at that 3rd spot, I have TreVeyon Henderson, the Ohio State running back. Tre's 5'10", 202 pounds, and a big reason Ohio State made it to and won the national championship. First off, this guy eats blitzing linebackers for breakfast. You don't see many running backs that block better than Henderson, especially backs at 205 pounds. The highlight reel is really fun and extraordinary to watch. He's a playmaker. Tre's a guy you want when the chips are down or the play looks grim to start with. This guy was a real difference maker when you think the team's in a pinch. I saw him turn negatives into positives quite often. TreVeyon might only weigh 200 pounds, but he hits dudes like he's 225. You see people pop up as he hits them. Tre's rocked up and can deliver punishment. I'd also note the ability to ball his momentum and carry forward to finish runs like he's made of bricks. He has a really great hurdle in his arsenal. He used it a lot more than you typically see. No matter the situation, you can never count Tre's decision to leave the ground and attempt to embarrass an incoming defender. Plenty capable as a pass catcher, but he's really not a specialist there. I like the suddenness with his routes, the availability and urgency as a check down option, with the ability to make big plays from a simple pass play. He's a real sudden mover with the ability to plant his foot and move at will. I don't care if it's in open space or around the line, Henderson constantly used foot speed that'll pass fast at the next level. The play speed and acceleration is so fun to watch. Gotta take note of the way he initially bursts through the gaps and breaks all angles from defenders crashing or linebackers waiting around, and he blows past those guys. Or even when he's loose up the sideline and separates with speed over a longer duration. When someone's like that and has athleticism like that, gotta take note. His lighter build doesn't allow him to play with power without speed. I think he needs to have some sort of momentum built up for him to be effectively powerful as a runner. I'm really not in awe with his processing and reads. I see a lot of gap scheme runs with him, so he has defined lanes, and to be honest, I just didn't see him reading the line and using his vision all that often. When he does, and I do see it, it is pretty hit or miss. But I think he can develop that aspect of his game, and he's far from a lost cause when it comes to reading his blocks up front. I don't think it's a particularly big deal, but the pacing behind the line of scrimmage can be a bit inconsistent. I think there are times where he could slow down to help his blockers and himself to let the play develop, or even vice versa. Maybe a backside defender gets free and chases Henderson down because he's too slow to the point. There's only a few examples, but this did pop up. Tre leaves his feet as a running back. It's just really not great. It is justifiable in spots, but sometimes you wish he doesn't have 2 feet in the air so often. Overall though, Tre's an explosive playmaking running back that can open a backfield and develop into a devastating playmaker at the next level. His ability as an athlete's appealing for evaluators, and I think his skill set's a very fun yet rare one. Omarion Hampton's running back 2 and shares a tier with TreVeyon Henderson. Omarion's got freak size at 6 feet tall and weighs 220 plus pounds. He just looks like he was made in a laboratory. And in that laboratory, they programmed him to make short yardage look personal for Hampton. I don't know what it is, but it looks like his life is on the line when he's fighting for those yards in the short yardage situations. And I love it. The hands look natural and coordinated in the pass game. I see a lot of hand catching. It looks easy, and he doesn't really lose any steps or momentum when he's reeling the ball in and gathering himself to make moves after the catch is finished. He'll finish every run with power and violence if he can. Omarion's capable of steamrolling over defenders with built-up speed and has no chill when it comes to throwing himself into contact. The frame has a lot of sturdiness and pure muscle mass. Hampton receives hits real well and can dish out punishment just as well as he takes it. Sometimes you see it with crashing DBs or smaller linebackers when they go to make a tackle, but Omarion's ready for it, drops the pads, and drops the human. My favorite plays from Omarion comes from his work in pass protection. I'm really impressed with the upper body strength that Omarion puts on display consistently. Hampton can also plant his legs in the ground, lower the pads, square up, and hold that ground. Omarion's biggest separator from Jeanty is the pass protection. I scored Hampton much higher in pass pro. Notable acceleration through the gaps up front. You see him hit it, accelerate, and break through arm tackles, or even just go through untouched because he's up to speed that quickly. I thought that reflected at the combine when he ran a 1.54 10-yard split at 221 pounds. Very impressive athlete. He's kind of like a brick. If you dropped a brick from a good height, it'll build up steam the further it goes down, and I assure you it'll be very powerful when it hits. So if a tackler wants to get under the brick and try to catch the falling brick with his momentum built up, it won't be an easy task, and I'd expect it to hurt. Very interesting run scheme at UNC, to be kind with my words. It's a lot different than stuff you normally see, but they still do run some basic and base schemes. They sure add a lot of different looks that you don't see with too many other running backs coming out of college though. After watching Jeanty, it is very apparent that Hampton's lower in the rankings. It's not nearly the same, and especially when it comes to watching them back to back, I don't think it's comparable in my opinion. I wasn't one that was so fond of his vision between the tackles. It looks like he'd rather drop his eyes and plummet up the gut rather than scanning and staying diligent inside. I'll put it this way, I think the mindset was a lot more of power through rather than thinking it through. I think he's the only guy I mentioned this for because it's very relevant, but there's a lot of wear and tear on the tires for Hampton. Even when you get later into these games, he's asking to be subbed out. He's slow to get up after some hits, and he just looks exhausted because he's carrying the ball so frequently and taking a beating. With Hampton, I don't really think you have a dangerous back in the open field when it comes to Hampton's elusiveness. He does use subtle and efficient movement, and I like his ability to weave through a defense, but that's not the same as juking someone out in a phone booth. Despite running a 4.46 40-yard dash at the combine, I think the long speed lacks a little. I'm not saying it's not impressive because he's a very talented athlete. I just didn't see someone that was outpacing an entire defense when he had the opportunities to do so, and he had quite a few ops. Omarion's an admirable specimen with plenty going for him. He's a projected first rounder due to his impressive size, stature, and athletic ability for his hefty size profile. I like his power and his quickness out of the gate, which actually helps him generate some momentum to plow forward. But I feel like there's a lot that I differ on compared to the consensus. To me, I think he's great, not elite, and I think I see him as an early to mid-second rounder rather than a pure first-round talent. Omarion has a lot of upside, all the tools, and the ability to be a great 3-down running back in the NFL, and I'll be excited to see where he goes and how big of an impact he can make to start his career. It sounds like I'm a little more negative on him, but trust me, he's still my running back 2 in a loaded class. I like the player a fair amount. Ready for this bombshell, people? I'm sure most of y'all will be surprised, but Ashton Jeanty is actually my #1 running back. All jokes aside, Jeanty's 5'8.5", 211 pounds, and a smaller school player at Boise State. Ashton Jeanty is known for the otherworldly contact balance. The thing you hear most, or at least what I hear most about Jeanty, is his ability to stay on his feet through contact and bounce off tacklers like a pinball. And that stood true. You'd be pressed to find another running back in this class and most other classes with equivalent or better balance. This is someone who understands and can process the blocks in front of him. A real underrated part of his game is his processing and vision. Ashton knows what the run schemes are targeted to do. He knows how to read it gap to gap, and he's extremely quick to process the way defenders play. They ran a lot of zone at Boise State, and that comes with pattern reads where you get in rhythm by going gap to gap or here to here, or even just reading your blockers from outside to inside. I think he's a very smart runner who does things quick and correct in his head. His field defined soft spots in the best available lane is pretty funny to watch. I'm actually pretty sure he was born to play running back. You watch other backs who run into blocks and just don't do so well in congested areas on the field, but Jeanty, he's consistently getting to the right spots. Very rarely was he out of position or doing the wrong things behind his blocks. As someone who enjoys all running schemes, it's nice to watch a running back excel in all running schemes. Jeanty shows plenty in both zone and gap schemes that I know he's capable of having tremendous production in whatever is put in front of him at the next level. I absolutely love the way that Ashton Jeanty finishes with power on 99% of his runs. There's hardly any of examples where Jeanty's not falling forward or doing something at the end of a run to maximize his rep. There were plays that Jeanty has that I literally found myself laughing the longer it went on. He's running and I expect him to get tackled, but he stays up and he does that 3 more times, and I couldn't help but start laughing out loud at how stupid good this kid is at running the football and keeping himself off the ground. This dude will lower the pads, bet on himself, and meet you in the gap. Whether it's in pass pro or in the run game, Ashton will punish you in collision scenarios, and I'll happily bet on him. The Penn State game was at another speed. I literally thought the tape was sped up after watching him play so much lesser competition. The defense clearly outmatched Boise State, and Jeanty still had his moments in that game. The thing that stood out to me was how he reacted to the Penn State defenders. Jeanty still clearly belonged and even outclassed the higher level players on a very good team. The amount of times a Penn State player penetrated the backfield within seconds was tough to watch, but Jeanty made him miss and still broke tackles at a fantastic rate, whether it was in his own backfield, at the line of scrimmage, or even once he got to that second level. Body control and the short area efficient movements are also a big part of his game. It's kind of like pass rushers, where you talk about a player with power and maybe lacks some finesse or speed to offset it. But Jeanty's got it all. He's got the full skill set. We're talking about a very fluid and efficient mover with subtle steps and ability to control himself in tighter spaces or even in open spaces. I could legitimately take notes of at least 7 more positives from his tape, but 1, I'm sure you've already heard them all, and 2, I'd be writing about almost every aspect of playing running back because the list of things Jeanty does well is a mile long. Some of his pass pro is outstanding and some of it's a little messy or underwhelming. I think he could be a little slow when he's approaching the point of attack, and sometimes he'd drop the shoulder and lean into a block without being square to the defender, and the defender just jukes or gets around him. I really did not like that the zone plays were called so frequently when they weren't working and the defense was loading the numbers in the box. Some of of those play calls had me dumbfounded. The only weakness as a runner I could find is his ability not to be Spider-Man. He'll get tripped up from behind as his legs are just so explosive that he's a little vulnerable to those shoelace and lower leg tackles, specifically when he can't judge where someone's arm is going to make contact. I don't know if this will make sense, but it does in my own brain. Hopefully it does in yours. Ashton Jeanty is very capable of running behind gap schemes. We've said this, but every A++ play that I watched in Chartered was from a zone blocking scheme. So even if I think he's extremely equipped to play any run scheme, I think zone was more of his forte along with his linemen at Boise. You know when your parents would say like the world doesn't revolve around you? Well, the defenses Ashton faced sure seemed to revolve around Ashton Jeanty. The impact and influence he had over an entire defense every snap is simply unbelievable. Jeanty's uber talented with more than enough reason to go inside the top 10 picks, and I'll easily have him listed as a top 3 to 5 talent in this entire class, and he'll go down as one of the best running backs I've ever watched. Well, that was the end of the video and the end of my thoughts on the running back class, at least the top 10. Anyways, that'll be it for me. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like, go down, subscribe, go to the past content of the channel. It means a lot, and I'll see you guys next time. Deuces!